Hi everyone. Today is Tuesday. I am Professor Vogel. You can call me Emily if you like. I'm professional, but not. I always maintain casual understandings of who I am. Um, so um, I just wanted to clarify because some of you had some questions, had emailed me some questions about video lectures and conferencing and discussion boards and that kind of thing. Um, I guess ideally it would be great if you posted when on the day that the discussion board was happening during when you do when you do the reading, and then if you just have some comments. And with that in mind, I did read all of your comments and passages that you wrote. Actually, it was very nice. You all wrote some passages on the discussion board. Um, and I was very pleased that you all, I would say every single one of you who posted on the discussion forum had some wonderful insights about this story by Virginia Woolf. I'll move on to the second part of the video lecture and the conferences at the end of the lecture. I don't know if this is a lecture, this is a talk. I always find it very strange. I don't usually do video lectures, I usually do Zoom meetings, so I get the feedback of the students as I'm talking so that it becomes more of a conversation rather than me sitting in a room all alone talking to myself and looking at myself as if I'm speaking to a mirror, which is a very odd circumstance for somebody, if we're not in a room, feeling like me standing in a room giving a speech, which I hope this does not sound like a speech. I tend to talk a little bit quickly, and then, I hope I don't talk too quickly for you. So just to get back to Kew Gardens, I trust that all of you read it. It was not a long story to read. Some of I'm just kind of going off what some of you guys addressed in your responses on the discussion forum. It made me think some things that people were saying made me think kind of about the microcosm of the garden, right? Where it's set, the setting, which is kind of where my question was leading to for your response paper. Kind of this microcosmic world, which is very, and a lot of you use the word vivid, illustrative. Very, her imagery is so precise, Virginia Woolf's. Her imagery is so incredibly vivid. It is incredibly cinematic is the word I think I would use. It's like you can see everything. And somebody on the discussion forum also mentioned that it reminded them of what I think it was a Georgia O'Keeffe painting or something like that, which is what Virginia Woolf does in her writing, is that she's like the queen of really expanding her imagery so that you can see so well the setting down to the last minute detail. So I think that's one aspect of the piece and of her writing. If you ever read other works by her, on and off the side note here, one of her most famous works, if you're familiar with literature, it's a wonderful work to read. It's called The Room of One's Own, which is a kind of very long, expansive kind of essay, but it's more like a novella kind of length of essay, about how a woman needs her own space, her own room, her own time, away from the world of the patriarch or the world of the men who were prominent and who were writing and who were actually getting all the accolades back then. In that part of the 20th century, Virginia Woolf was probably, as for female writers, the most prominent female writer of the 20th century, that part of the 20th century. Later on, of course, you have poets like Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton and Elizabeth Barrett Browning and all of the very prominent poets that you may have heard of if you ever have studied poetry. On another off note, it's funny because during the beginning of the 20th century into the mid 20th century and on, toward the end of the 20th century, this trend stopped. But if you look at writers like Virginia Woolf and Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton, all of them took their own lives. Why could have been something related to the oppression they felt being women, writing in a milieu or world which was dominated by men. There was some anger involved. There was some kind of overwhelmingness of that literary brain happening, to the point where, as we know about Virginia Woolf in her life, she, the story goes is that she put rocks in her pockets and walked into a river, and she sunk. Very tragic, but we remember these writers and artists and things for what they wrote and the works they produced, and then we forget that their life might have ended in tragedy, or in some cases, like if you're looking at the painter Jackson Pollock, who in effect drank himself to the point where he killed 3 women in a car crash. Had a car crash and killed 3 women. We forget that part of him. We only remember his painting. So I'll just leave you with that part of it. Back to the story. So the microcosm and we were looking at the microcosm of the garden, the dragonflies, the butterflies, and a lot of you mentioned the snail. As for the snail, one of the first posts that came up was somebody was very, very interested in the snail, and I can't remember her name. You can tell me, you can let me know. You can say hi. You can't say hi here, but you can email me and say I was the one with the snail. Or you can read back through people's discussion posts if you like. It occurred to me, the snail might be kind of like a symbol of the way the narrative moves, because a snail, as a crustacean, if you want to call it a little, shellfish, kind of is the slowest, we know in our understanding of literature and our understanding of the world, or when we were little kids, we learned a snail is very slow. It moves very slowly, as the narrative does, as the pace of the walking or strolling through the garden, the characters stroll through the garden. This snail is happening at a slow pace, and Wolf keeps going back to the snail. There's a reference that keeps going back to the snail, to kind of, I think, bring us back to, well, this is a microcosm. The interesting part about this is that while they're in this microcosmic place or setting, they are discussing macrocosmic concepts like marriage or death, the long narrative about the marriage proposal, and then it kind of ends toward the end of in the dialogue. Well, where does one have their tea? Where does one take their tea? Which is a very kind of simple question, but that digression into we're talking about these big topics and a whole lifespan. Somebody was talking about in the discussion forum. The story takes place over, I would say the time frame of when they're in the garden and as they're talking probably is about 20 to 30 minutes. I'm guessing, it's just an estimation. But within that time frame, somebody had brought up that an entire life is being discussed. Probably not every single detail in the life, but the major events in the lifetimes have been discussed. And some other people in the class were discussing past, present, and future. But as it kind of evolves or devolves into, well, where does one take their tea? That could be a really significant question in the story that is perplexing to me. Like, how do we get to that point? Well, we're dissolving the story, but it's like, well, we said, it happened, and now we're in the present, and we're going to take our tea. So another, obviously the story is about the delight of nature. And I had some notes here I was looking at here. So what I was looking at was how the elements of nature that Wolf describes seem to, as we keep referencing back to the elements of nature and back to the dialogue, the two kind of forces at work here in the story. The elements of nature, what's happening with the dragonflies and the butterflies and the snail, seem to respond to the concepts that are addressed in the dialogue or narrative of the story, and vice versa. It's like they work together, kind of in tandem, to create kind of this. To create the narrative, it's kind of like the nature is responding to the dialogue is responding to the nature, and it kind of makes this very just like that student said. I'm sorry I'm not remembering names here, but I just read through the discussion forum, but okay, it's escaping me. But I'll get back to that. But I think that I said I wish I could remember what I was going to say about that student. So I'm forgetting your name. The Georgia O'Keeffe understanding of this is kind of like and that was a really great insight, by the way. And I hope you guys go back to the discussion forum and read through some of the posts, because really it you don't necessarily need to enter into dialogue with the other classmates. That would be terrific if you did, because that's why it's called a discussion forum, so that you can respond to other people's posts and that kind of thing, and not just kind of like make it a one-sided thing between me and the student, the student and the professor. So if you want to get involved in discussions, I'll interject where I can, when I can. I think that is better than, just kind of like you sitting in a room, me sitting in a room, you doing the work, and me doing the work, and then it's kind of like almost like a one-to-one tutorial. So we try to, let this class kind of cultivate as much as possible as a class. I know it's a 3-course winter session, so it's like we're just plowing through it. And I hope that I didn't overload you with the work. I think it's fine. We're only reading 6 works of literature. They're fairly short, except to Room 19 by Doris Lessing is a little bit lengthier. So when you get to that one, and I think Zadie Smith's A Waiter's the Wife is also a little bit lengthier as well. And she is our last writer, because she actually, that story just made it into the 20th century. It was published in the New Yorker in 1999. I said, hey, I want to use this story. So it was the 20th century technically, although we were moving on into, the preface to 9/11 and the technological explosion, revolution, whatever you want to call it, where literature started to become something else than it was in the 20th century. The literature of today, we are looking as part of our course objectives at how the literature of the 20th century helped to shape the literature of today, or allowed maybe 21st century rejected some of the precepts of 20th century literature, or built on them, or changed them, or how they evolved. A lot of literature that's being written in the 21st century is very experimental. A lot of the topics that are addressed, I always ask my students at the beginning of the class, who's your favorite writer? Who's your favorite book? And they all mention these bestsellers, usually romantic novels, or fantasy is very big right now, and dystopic literature as well. So there was dystopic literature written in the 20th century. We all know 1984. We know Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, all of those novels that were supposed to kind of predict what you might say is happening in our world today in some way or form, similar to what is described in those novels. That's not what we're talking about. That's why I can't teach novels in a 3-week course anyway. So we're looking at these authors. The last order of business, because I had some questions. these videos you can watch whenever you want. Trying to make this course as informative, as effective, as good as possible for you, but also as feasible as it could be, because I know a lot of you have other responsibilities right now during this interim between semesters, and a lot of you are working, taking other classes, and when I was assigned this course, I was not given a specific time when the course meets. I could have chosen one, but it would have been very difficult with, coordinating all of that with all the students that have different schedules. So this is why we're not meeting synchronously in a Zoom meeting. So you can watch this video at your leisure. I would suggest you watch it. Maybe you just think I'm spewing shit at you, but I'm just trying to address what you wrote in the discussion forum. So please keep posting. And the other question was, do I have to meet for conferences with you on Tuesday, Thursday? That's an option. If you want to discuss anything that we're reading or any other questions you may have, and you want to schedule a brief 10 to 15 minute one-to-one, it's like an office hour. It's just that it's virtual. So if you want to meet with me, I will be available during sometimes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, also by appointment any other day, maybe if we can work it out. I know a lot of you are working during the day, and that maybe some evening hours. My only problem is I have children, and my children come home from school around 2:30 or 3 o'clock. So if we meet after that, you're not going to get the best, how can I say this, focused meeting as you possibly can, because you might get children yelling in the background, and that's not optimal for you or ideal. But Tuesdays, Thursdays, if you want to, if you have a break, if you have a lunch break, whatever, and you want to just kind of jump on the computer and meet with me, I am open to doing that. The next story is so your response paper, and oh, by the way, because all of you had such wonderful insights, I would say it's fair to say, I think at this point, if some of you had insights that didn't have much to do with my question in the assignment, so if you want to go off on your own digression and write about what you thought were some of the themes, or what you thought was a critical, concept in the story, or how you want to describe it, that's fine. You don't necessarily need to respond to my question. The questions are only there because, as I'm used to teaching composition to freshmen, they always have to have their guiding questions. It's like they're lost if they don't have a guiding question. This particular group of students seems to be able to gather something from the reading without the professor's guidance. So I'm totally open to writing a 2-page response, however you would like to respond. So the next, that's due tomorrow. And then I think between Wednesday and Thursday, you can read Shooting an Elephant. It's kind of between those 2 days. So between Wednesday and Thursday, I'll try to jump on and do another video lecture on Thursday. Might come a little bit later in the day. But then as you follow the syllabus, if anybody has questions about the syllabus, you don't necessarily need to meet for an office meeting. You can also just send me a quick email. And we'll just leave it at that. So I'm going to try to post this video. I'll send out a group email if it doesn't post, because I'm not used to doing this, and this is a brand new computer, so I'll do my best. Everybody have a good one.